Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business Radio, the show about ways to stay competitive in a changing market, break through business plateaus, and respond to the changing expectations of today's customers. Your host, Jess Dewell, is a rapid growth entrepreneur, consultant, and business advocate with a 20-year track record of business excellence. She candidly discusses how to achieve your growth strategy and realize your company's unfulfilled potential. Now, here's Jess.
You are in the right place for conversations about current needs that we as business leaders are facing every single day regarding technology, customer expectations, and quickly changing markets. This program is about what it means to reach short-term goals and increase confidence in long-term positioning. Have no fear, Program 179 is here. We're talking about how to instill culture in new employees. How do you help new employees understand the culture of your organization, work within that culture, and succeed into future leadership positions? Today, we're talking with Ron Goode, who has a Master's of Education with over 20 years of experience. Not only does Ron develop training and education programs, he's been the Director of Education at Truckload Carriers Association since 2010. This is where he focuses on training and education program development for the interstate trucking industry. He's developed the Truckload Academy and created the Truckload Academy On Demand, TCA's online learning portal. We are so glad to have you on the program today, Ron. How's it going?
It's going great. How are you, Jess?
Oh, every day is a great day. Even when they're kind of bumpy, I usually can find something good, especially when I'm getting ready to or have just finished an amazing conversation.
Exactly. Completely identify with that.
Can you?
Yes.
It's one of those things, and now we're talking just personality, right?
Yes.
I know that I can go make eye contact, smile at a stranger, walk down the hall and have a conversation with a colleague, call up Scott on an instant messenger and get on a video call if and when I need to pick me up, right? We all have networks like that. And I'm just curious, is that really the start of where culture begins and shows up in organizations? Or is there a piece that comes before that network of support within an organization?
That is an excellent question. I think that that comes from the overall atmosphere of an organization, which usually starts at the top. In my experience and my understanding of even things like learning and education in the workplace, it starts from the top. If the executives, the managers, the directors, the people who are running the organization or directing it, if they create a culture where people are open and friendly and they embrace it or inspire it or encourage it, then it trickles down to every level of the organization. That's what I've seen happen so many times. For example, here at TCA, where I work, our new president, John, is really good about having an open door policy and having people be able to, express their joy of working and removing the silos between departments and having people be themselves. As long as we're getting our work done, I think he really feels that a happy workforce is a productive workforce. And I agree with that.
You said a key phrase. It starts at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Is culture really the only thing that we do in business that starts from the top? It can't start from the bottom. I mean, in my mind, I've seen that over time. Every time we try and see change happen from within, very rarely does it stick. When change happens from the top, what the actions that happen at the top, that's what we see all the way through.
Right. I see. That's interesting that you brought that up. When I was working on my master's degree, we were actually, I was in a cohort and we would have these amazing discussions about learning and adult learning and how it takes place in different environments. And we read our article, I can't remember who was the author. It was about power, the power that people have. And it talked about the power to make decisions, the power to create change or to start change. There were different types of power, and then it listed who had power at different levels of the organization. And, at certain levels, you have the power to make a decision. At certain levels, you had more power to, inspire change or make change happen. And one of the things that I noticed in this discussion that the author didn't talk about, that I brought up in class, was the power to act. Like there's every level of the organization, everyone has the power to act, to take an action. And I said many times, it's the people at the lower, and I hate using that, higher or lower, but that's how organizations are. There are people who are hierarchically in an organization at the lower rungs of the organization. Maybe their influence, and that was another power, the power of influence, but their influence or their ability is, maybe they're a clerk or the copier guy that runs the copy machine, but they have an ability to act that a president or vice president might not have, simply because of their schedule and the complexity of their job. And so that power is very amazing and it's very powerful, and you can accomplish a lot with it simply because you have the ability to act at a level that no one else does. That people will listen to you, that you have an influence in a way that a vice president, a director, a manager might not. So I'd say that, and what I've experienced in organizations, even here at TCA, that people at every organization have the power to act, and sometimes that power creates change. That they just took an action that people liked, that other people followed. My boss who hired me when I first came here told me that that the energy I brought changed how other people responded to each other here. Like she said, it had an impact on everyone, because I took I had the power to act either positively or negatively every morning. So every morning I come in and say hi to everyone, right? Versus, coming in a bad mood, and so that had an impact on my coworkers. So I think people embracing that power, because they can also have the power to take the organization in the opposite direction. I've seen that happen.
Yes, I've been in those situations too.
Yes, in both, exactly. So I would say, and the change that, to me, it grows organically from the bottom. From the top is kind of understood. It's almost created and kind of, it flows down. But when it comes from other levels of the organization, it's organic because it's inspired by something. And a lot of times that inspiration comes from the top. Sometimes it comes from the top. Sometimes it comes from other levels of the organization, simply because someone exercised their power to act.
You're speaking to my heart. My heart light is shining brighter as I'm listening to you speak. Purposeful action is such an important part of what we do, not only to live our own lives, to make the best impact possible as we're working with others in whatever role that is, a cross-functional team, a volunteer role, an advisor, an employee, a boss, whatever the titles are, whatever the hierarchy is, we do have that power. And thinking about it and wanting to take that the next thing. So the next piece, which is sustaining some sort of culture over time. After listening to you, it's clear to me that the power to act is the core of that sustainability.
Yes.
And so what can somebody do who's in the middle of a team or leading a team and the sustainability is gone, right? There's a leak somewhere and this energy is dripping out, and the people that are coming together are choosing not to engage, are choosing not to use the power of action every single day.
Yeah, that's a very good question. You ask really good, thought-provoking questions.
Comes from good conversationalists like you. This is awesome.
No problem. Thank you. I would say that there's a couple things you can do, some short-term, some long-term, and some kind of midterm maybe. One thing is if someone leaves, whether there is voluntary, involuntary, finding a replacement that can not only replace that person's job function, but their function socially within the organization. Like fill that void, someone that fits the culture of the organization. Sometimes the culture of an individual person and the culture of an organization don't match, even though that person's skills are phenomenal. It's just something, it's just not a match. And you can either accept that and hope that they embrace the culture, or you can look at the next candidate that has the same skill set, same ability, but you feel their culture, you know, that their personal, their individuality, or personality fits better with the group. So that's kind of a midterm solution, because I don't know how long it's going to take you to find that person to fill that void, you know, that person left. The other is to try to reactivate, short term, reactivate the people that person was connected to. I know we've had people leave here, leave TCA for many reasons. They found other opportunities. We were happy that they did, or they felt that this didn't fit them, and you know, or something, I don't know, or they decided to go back to school. You know, we had someone do that, and so they needed their time to study and, you know, work on their degree. But the people that they were connected to, that they influenced, their actions didn't change. Had there been something that changed, you know, that we missed about them, then, you know, I would have just tried to reactivate that with the people who were left that was connected to that person. I have not seen that happen. You know, even on my own team, I recently, someone, you know, left the organization voluntarily, and who was a great asset to our organization and worked really well with me and the other person on my team. And so with that person's departure, because they found another opportunity, we were very happy, you know, for them. That person's departure, me and the other person picked up areas where they left off. Not, and in terms of their job function, you know, things that they did, I took on some of them as the director, because this person was a mid-manager. So I was the director, this was a manager, and then there was the coordinator. And so there's the coordinator, director left, the two bookends left, so to speak. Yeah. And so, you know, this coordinator is a great guy. He, you know, Jamil, he just stepped right up and picked up some of the pieces she left, and I picked up some that she left, and, you know, while we're looking for replacement. But that's the practical side. That's the organizational side in terms of the job function. But the other side is we all had such a strong commitment to good communication, inter-department communication, working with our colleagues who are wonderful in other departments to create this culture of support where everyone, we're a small staff, but we're mighty. We get a lot done.
You do get a lot done.
We get a lot done at TCA for a small staff. And so those social parts, we kind of picked up too, you know, the people she interacted with and how she interacted to get things done. So I think that that's the short-term solution, is inspiring that, is to reactivate the people around them if that happens. And then, you know, more short-term is finding a replacement that can fill that. And then long-term is making sure it continues. You know, that you always have a plan, a contingency plan, because any employee at any time could come in and give you their notice. You have no control over that, right? Because again, they have the power to act, right? So,
exactly, yes.
So you have the power to be proactive at the same time. So a long-term plan that creates a sustainable culture, a culture of embracing and what do you call it? Creativity, a culture of cooperation, communication that is always there, so that if one link is missing, the change just comes back together with who's left. And I think that's the long-term plan.
Now I'm thinking about culture and values, right? Mm-hmm. There's a common thinking, and this is a loose association that's easy to make, which is our culture is defined by our values. So as long as people can recite those values, we're good to go. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I found that to not be true. I'm not about you. I'm not sure about you, but I found that just because we can recite the values doesn't mean that that's actually what our culture is or what's making up our culture.
Yes.
Because the power to act, I'm totally going to be using this forever now, Ron. The power to act is what's going to decide.
Yes, you're right. Yes.
Now,
Go ahead.
I would like you to continue, please. Go
Okay,
ahead.
sure. No, what I was going to say is you're absolutely correct. What I feel with value and culture and how this all fits with the power to act is the company values are the foundation of the culture you create. It's actually people's actions that that put the culture into play. In other words, they take the values of the organization and use those values to guide their actions, the collective good, toward the collective good. So that means they have to take actions based on it. Because you're right, you could know an organization's value, what their value statement is, recite it. You could recite it. You could learn it so well, you could recite it backwards. But do you act on it, right? You could go through the motions when you're out in public or in a meeting where you're visible as if you believe in those values, but then most of a company's culture happens not in the forefront, not in this limelight. Sometimes it does. Sometimes you see it. Like when we have a convention, you can see the culture of cooperation the staff has because it's a small number of us managing a large conference and we're taking care of our members, we're supporting each other. So sometimes it's visible, but a lot of it is what people do on the phone when they answer the telephone. How they interact one-on-one with either a member or customer, if you're a company, member if you're an association, how they react with a member, on the phone, how they talk to them offline, how they talk to them at a conference when they're at a reception, when it's just the two of them. Like those kind of actions we don't always see. So the person who says they understand the values but don't act on them, you wouldn't know that because when they're in the limelight or when they're in a visible place, they take on the actions of really believing in their company value. But it's the people who actually do it as a part of their being that just comes out of them, right? That is the culture. That's when the values, to me, the values set the foundation, but it's the person's action that they take based on those values that create the culture. That's the way I see it.
You are listening to The Voice of Bold Business Radio. In every program, we share stories, tips, and concepts that benefit short-term goals and increase confidence in long-term positioning. For additional perspectives on your growth strategy, Jess Dewell is your business advisor and consultant. Go to voiceofboldbusiness.com and click the Find Out More button to get started. Now, back to Jess.
Do more than just subscribe. Continue this conversation. It is through our conversations that we can learn from each other and maybe avoid a mistake that somebody else around us has made. Maybe provide insight to help another avoid that same mistake. Let's let this ooze right out of us. The action, the power to act. As Ron Goode, creator of Truckload Academy's on-demand learning portal, has been sharing with us so far. We're talking about instilling culture in new employees. This is program 179. And we've started in the deep end with just our floaties on. And we're going to stay there. And maybe we'll kick our floaties off and see if we can actually doggy paddle or dive or who knows what's going to happen next. But I have to tell you, just to keep going from where we left off, we were just talking about values being the foundation for the culture, and the way that people are acting is the representation of the culture. So my next question is, when we're bringing somebody new into the organization, and we have some people that the values and the way that they act and the choices that they're making are exactly what we know we need for growth and sustainability as an organization. And every organization has the people who are a little less consistent, shall we say. And so how do we make sure, and what are the things that we can do through training and mentorship and other things to really make sure that the right behaviors are shown so that the way that we work together is incredibly clear?
Very good. That's another excellent question. I think, especially new people coming on to work for your organization, you should have, and I think most companies do, some kind of onboarding process. It's not just orientation. It's not just they sit down with the HR director and go over the benefits and the time schedule, that kind of thing.
All that, check.
Yes, that's right. You get their W-2 form filled out, you know what I mean, and the whole 9 yards and that kind of thing. It's beyond that. It's also, looking at, one of the things that we do here, someone comes on new, each department spends about an hour meeting with them and sharing what they do. And what we did with education is when we meet with them, we talk about how our department and their department work together. So automatically we start to share that culture of, breaking down the silos that, which is one of our values, is that we're a team. That's a value of TCA, is we bring value to our members. We bring value to members of the association. We bring value to the members of the team, each person. And so we go over that. We talk about that. And each person in the department shares something. It's not just one person. It's all of us as a team, whatever our area of responsibility is. So I think that process, that getting that person, first of all, they learn about, each new program, each, department, things that they didn't know anything about, but they learn it from the people that they're going to be working with in the future. And then they can start to feel this sense of, we're here to support you. So that's one of our that's our value to each other, but it's a part of our culture is we support each other. We're a team. The team wins, everybody wins. You win, I win. It's that feeling. That's what I love about working here. Everyone pitches in where they can to help each other. So that starts, right away. So I think each organization, when they bring somebody new, that's part of it. Then tying that to training and development and education, one of the things that I, experience and reading a lot of authors and people who've done research on training in the workplace and that kind of thing is there are a couple different approaches you can take. One is a more content-centered approach. So in other words, you want the person to learn this about their job, this skill, that's really training, is a skill, specific skill. So you want them to learn this skill and understand how to do this thing. And it's very content-centered. Another approach is the greater good centered. In other words, how what they're learning is going to benefit either their department, their job, or the organization. But the bottom line is what good is going to provide to the organization's overall, the organization's goal. And then, but the third one that I think we should consider is a learner-centered approach. What does that person need? That new person we just brought on, what do they want? And then I think we should spend some time finding out what they would like to learn, what they need to, what is their opinion about their professional development, within the organization so they can move forward. And then look at the goals of the organization or the direction of the organization, and then look at the content, the things that we would like them to know, and find out where the intersection is, and then if either if the person-centered approach, if there's things related to it and one of the other two, then fine, maybe that's the direction you go. But if you can find the intersection of all three, from the learner-centered, the organization-centered, the, content-centered, if you can find that sweet spot, go for that one. But I'll take 2 out of 3 any day over 1 out of 3.
They do the same thing for websites and web delivery is, there are 3 pieces of the puzzle and it's like, it's almost like finding a genie in a bottle when you get all 3 of them together.
Yes, it is.
Working with the online technologies, I know you can relate to that. And so, yes, the same is true when we're talking about people or we're talking about implementation of any kind. And so
that's right.
Thank you for letting me interrupt and put a point under that and underline it with big, bold caps.
Yes. Because you're right. It's rare the 3 come together.
Yeah.
That's why I say I'll take 2 out of 3. But as long as I think you'll get the best result is at least one of those pieces is looked at from the person, the individual centered approach from that, if, you know, versus the intersection of the organization and the content.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's the key.
It is the key. Okay. So how do I want to say this? Sometimes the people who are in charge of deploying the training, understanding who the people are, how to bring the people into introducing them to the culture, allowing them to experience, work with some of the people that they're going to be working with, but they're not, you know, they're the container of the onboarding, and then they go away. Right. And I'm thinking about your industry. We've got people that are in admin, and we have people that are drivers.
Right.
And most of the time, somebody in the admin side, the oversight side, is the one doing the training for the drivers. And the drivers and then the trainers, they only intersect occasionally. And so there's a big gap in the middle of that. Now, and I'm using this because it's perfect illustration to every business. We all have gaps in our organization of where we have a leaky culture and something is missing. So in this particular case, how have you been able to support the organizations, the members of TCA to help close that particular leaky gap around culture and onboarding?
That is a very good question. Actually, my job here, which is to develop the training and education for the industry, sometimes leave me out of that loop in terms of the type of training education I provide. A lot of it is related to finding and keeping drivers. However, one of the things I do is try to provide educational value that helps organizations understand how to close that gap. Like you said, we do training on onboarding, you know, because you're right. You know, you have a recruiter that recruits, you know, has a relationship with the driver and, you know, recruits them, and then they come on board, and then eventually they are, you know, they go through the admin part because they go through the orientation and the onboarding, and at some point they lose contact with their recruiter. But, you know, now most of their time is spent with their fleet manager, the person that dispatches them. And so that's where their main contact is. So it's like a transfer over to that person. However, what things that we try to do is train the fleet managers to pick up, you know, in terms of their relationship with drivers, where they're, in a sense, the recruiter left off in that personality, you know, that relationship, rather, not personality, but the relationship. So we actually created a training program. It was one that is called the Fleet Manager Certification Program. And it was based on a 1-week course that I worked with the author, one of the presenters of this 1-week course, to turn it into an online program. And that's what it talks about: personality types and how fleet managers can relate to drivers, so that transition for them is not only one that makes the driver feel welcome, but it keeps them, you know, at the same time. So it's what happens after the orientation. It's what happens after the initial bringing in, the orientation, but it's a continuation of that process, because the reality is, you know, these recruiters and these admin people, they're going to see many, many people over their lifetime, because they're going to come and some are going to stay and some are going to leave, but there will always be new people. There's no way, it's impossible for one person to keep contact with all those people. So that means somebody else has to do it. And so you have to have a system set up that makes that transition easy, that embraces people. And I just use the driver because it's a great way, but there's internal staff as well. You know, there's internal staff that's recruited, and how they are, treated and embraced in the organization. And one of the great things about the trucking industry, there are many family-owned organizations, and they already have this family atmosphere. You know, and even I think some of the larger companies have learned to kind of create that same embracing kind of culture. And what I've learned from the people that I've talked to and just working with them is I could see that that's a part of just trucking. It's like embracing, because even people from competing trucking companies will help each other out. Like you're so willing to, help a colleague and to learn from each other. So it's a great culture to have. You just have to make sure there's some kind of transition or peace in it. And, TCA is, we do lots of HR related topics and, help our members understand how to do that, which is a little different than how we might do it here because we're smaller.
And you're serving a different function, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I mean, the staff that you have are different roles than the staff of the organizations that you are providing services to.
Exactly.
And that's an interesting thing because you're always thinking out of the box that way, always looking in that, in that capacity of, so I know enough about this industry. How does it feel? What does it look like?
Yes.
What is the experience that we want to take away? I like the word embrace also, Ron. When you were talking about embracing, it was making me think of, and I don't know why this came up, but I'm thinking like back to when I was 6 years old and I moved to a new city. I got a call the day that I arrived from a girl that was exactly my age that lived, cat a corner to my backyard. And the fact that her mom had gone out of the way to get our phone number to make that phone call was incredibly welcoming. Yeah. And some people, and I'm using this one because it was the first one and it's very empowering. Katie is still a friend of mine to this day. We don't have enough of those in our lives. Yeah. And so to just pull out that nugget and say, what else can we do to make, we've all been new kids. How do we feel welcome? And I have to remember that sometimes because in my world, I'm like, yeah, come on in and join the party. I always think people are in my brain, are in my space, are what's happening, sometimes a little too quickly. Yes. And one of the skills that I've learned as a leader is to recognize when I'm moving too quickly for somebody who's still trying to figure out, who's still trying to process, and recognize that everybody's got to learn the dynamic. There's a new dynamic because there's a new person on the team. And there's a new dynamic because that new person is new, as well as trying to figure out the dynamic that's changing just by their presence.
Right. That's right. Yes. That is so true. Yes. Yes. You're absolutely correct. And I think that, one of the things that first of all, I agree with what you just said. And one of the things that I noticed about here, at TCA is we're encouraged to embrace new employees. Like the emails always say the same thing. So-and-so is starting. We give everyone a heads up when they're starting. And it's always included and it's meant, please welcome them. Please make them feel welcome or please welcome them and embrace them. And one of the things that I do with the new people is I go and introduce them. I find out, who they are, where they're from, and just, find out about them a little bit, show some interest in them. And I try to make them laugh. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And then a lot of times I'll, say, I'd love to take you to lunch, one day and welcome you. And so that's really good. They feel, I think, relaxed, and everyone here, because we're such a small staff, it's easy to do that. But I've worked in larger organizations where that has happened. Where there's been 60, I worked with one association that had 62 employees, another one had 42. And there were pockets of people that were like that. There was a group that sat outside my office at my previous job, and I used to call them my sunshine group, because every morning I come in and say good morning to them, and they were so bright and cheerful, and it was just amazing, and we just kept that, we would just do these things for each other. And, one person, a friend that I didn't even know her name, but we just naturally liked each other. And we introduced each other without knowing each other's names as our smile buddy, because we had never really met. We just always saw each other and just smiled at each other. Because, great. Yeah, it was awesome. So it's like those kinds of things that create a very engaging, welcoming environment, I feel.
Now, what happens after this engaging environment is created? And sometimes, I don't want to use the phrase too comfortable, but we get a little too comfortable, right. If you know what I mean, the implication there. And then there's discord, there's disharmony, because the actions that, and maybe it's happening just incrementally over time. Somebody's actions, the power to act, more and more are out of alignment with the goals of the team,
Yeah.
with the culture of the organization. And do you have any tips on how to catch that on the early side?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I do, because I've seen that happen in organizations. And I think it's important, first of all, to nip that in the bud as soon as possible. Don't ignore it. If you see it, if you see something, say something. This is my opinion
Always.
about that. Always. Yes. And so I think it's, I've seen that happen where it was one of, it might be someone I was responsible for that I could, either contractor or somebody I had, working under me that I had to just go talk to very nicely, and just share my observation. That helped. There was one person that kind of didn't quite understand the culture here. And I think part of it was because he was originally a contractor. Maybe he didn't feel a part of the team. And so I tried to make him feel like, yes, you are a part of the team, but regardless, this is how we act as a team, because even though you're a contractor, we still consider you a part of the team. So
For that project.
For that project. Well, yeah, that's right. And so
you're all in. Come on.
All in. Yep. So sorry about that. I hit the microphone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes. So then, so that happens. But then there are other times when I've seen that, I've noticed that, and the person was not someone that I was responsible for, that worked for me, that was working under me, that I had brought in or whatever. So I had to go to that department head and then share my observation. And then they would say, yeah, okay, I'll talk to them about that. And then that's how we fix it. But you have to address it, as soon as possible, in a way that creates value, that creates a good embracing environment, not a, it's constructive criticism, not destructive. It's not accusatory. It's not, I always give people the benefit of the doubt. I don't assume or cast aspersions on why they did something, but just give my completely honest observation and what I feel the impact can be to the organization and what we're trying to do, and hope that the person I'm delivering this to understands it. But it's never accusatory or argumentative or anger or anything, because those things, you usually get the opposite response of what you want. And then you spend all this energy dealing with that. And so I think that's how you do it. And I think over time, when people see that, I think they start to realize this is what this organization is about and how I should act. And I think especially if the department heads from the top, like I said, from the top, if they embrace that, everyone else will.
Yeah.
I
That's
think
true. There's a lot to be said for leading by example.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
And listening to what you just said, the power of communication was really clear. The willingness to be transparent and watch and share what's being watched. And I'm guessing there was probably more to it than I observed this thing, unless it was like a gross problem, like this big, big, big problem. There's some observation going on. I'm noticing. And now let me just kind of tuck that away. And if I notice more, maybe I need to start making myself some notes. And depending on our work style, like for me, I'll feel it before I can articulate it.
Yes.
Some people will be able to remember every single date and every single thing and everything over time. I'm so happy for those people because I'm not one of them, and it takes all kinds.
Right. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So when I start feeling something, I'm like, all right, what can I still notice?
Right.
What can I still notice? And as I start taking time to notice, then I can put some puzzle pieces together and figure out, well, where is that, where is the little thorn, the little, the thorn in our sock that we walked through tall grass and had no idea was going to be a problem until we walked another mile. I mean, it's kind of the concept of how do we stop and listen, and will we? I wonder if that's the bigger question.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. You just made me think, will we? Will they? Will he? Will she? No, you're right. Because we're making a lot of assumptions. Like I make the assumption when I go to talk to another department head or another person that's responsible for someone else, that they're going to listen.
Yes.
But what if they don't?
Right? Yeah.
You know, what do you do then? Fortunately, I haven't encountered that yet here. So that's a good
High
sign.
five.
High five. That's right. High
Go
five. That's
TCA.
right. Yes. So, but what would I do if they didn't? And I think it would go to the next level, like go to the person that sees them, or the person I report to, you know, share my observation. But I think it's important to address it. And I think you brought up another point. One of the things I learned working for credit unions, you know, and I, you know, because I trained, my job there was to train the compliance officers that worked in credit unions. So I developed the training for them. And it was wonderful. I just love credit unions, and their employees are wonderful people. And one of the things that I learned studying compliance is that whatever you do, document, document, document. Like, that was a key thing, because if you go to someone with an observation, you need to give them examples. So I had a supervisor say to me once, "It seems he or she always does this." It was about, you know, an employee, right?
Yeah.
And so my response was, "Give me examples." And when they couldn't think of any, I was like, well, I cannot go to them and say, "It seems you always do this." What does that mean? You know, it seems like, you know, working every weekend is a good idea, but it doesn't.
Well, you know, they've passed the responsibility to you to figure it out and find out if it's real. And
Right.
unfortunately, subjectivity can only go so far.
Yes.
And that seems means you might interpret it differently. You might notice, you might not. You might be like, and what I heard you say was, you gave it right back.
Right. Yes.
Please, may I have some examples?
Yeah, give me examples. I need something to go to this person, because it seems to me like they're okay. Or else I would be talking, the conversation would be the other way. I'd be going to you about this person. So yeah. And then that way, when you talk to them, you have specific examples. That's something I always did, was if I observe something once, I make note of it. If I observe it again, I make note of it in the situation. And so that way, when I go talk to the person, I can say, these are the situations I'm talking about, because on this day you did this, like you said, and on this day you did this, and this is what I observed. Then they can see clearly where I'm coming from. It's not just some subjective, just, you know, feeling, good feeling.
We can talk about feelings. In the end, they still have to be they still have to be substance. There still has to be something behind that. And I very rarely use have to. In this case, we have to, because we're talking about another person and another person's feelings. And they may have no idea. They may think they're doing everything by the book, even doing more than they think they should to see that, to go that little extra mile because they like their position. So seems is a recipe for disaster.
It really is.
Yes.
It really is. You're absolutely correct. And I've never liked that when someone would say that to me, because.
And I protect my people. If somebody comes to me, I'm very similar. I'm like, well, you know, let's talk about it. Let's see if we can figure something out. Most of the time, those conversations never go anywhere. Nobody's ever going to hear about it. Nobody ever is going to get anywhere else, because it doesn't need to. Buck stops right here. Right?
That's right.
There's the encourager, the protector, the embracer, the giver. And now we're talking a little bit about soft skills. Is there a soft skill that you rely on the most every day in your work?
You mean me personally?
You personally.
I think it's the thing when I'm evaluated that I get the highest mark on every year.
Okay.
And that's interpersonal skills.
Okay.
How I relate to other people. It really is all about relationships when you get down to it. You know, and they say that about sales. They say sales, a lot of times, is about relationship. But when you think about it, sales is also your ability to influence someone, right? To influence them to purchase whatever it is you're selling. And if you think about our jobs, a lot of times we are trying to influence people to deliver to us what we need, or to take something we want them to have. So whether, you know, I'm trying to get someone to, you know, get training in an area, or I'm trying to get them to help me finish a project, it's almost a sales job in a sense. And but it's all relationship. It's like my relationship with that person is how I'm able to get them to do what someone else might not be able to get them to do. That might be outside of the scope of their job, that they're not, required to do specifically. And I think that skill, that ability to talk to people and have a relationship that's positive, that's, like you said, not too overt, not too far to the left, not too far to the right, but right smack dead in the middle, where it needs to be, is a great skill to have, because there's other soft skills like, your ability to solve problems is another one. Problem solving is one that I also usually get scored high on. It's my ability to see something, think about, and find a solution right away. There's your ability to deal with stress, your ability to deal with change. And I think all of those are supported. To me, what strengthens my ability to do all of those is how I'm able to deal with other people. Because a lot of whether I'm solving a problem, dealing with stress, or dealing with change, it all comes back to, many times I need someone else to work with me to solve the problem, or to overcome the change, or to deal with the stress. Because nobody can do any of this all by themselves, right? We all need each other. And so I think that skill is the one I rely on the most, personally, yes.
What makes it bold to instill culture in our new employees?
I think it is that word, bold. Be bold. Take a chance. Sometimes we want to be conservative and kind of test the waters out, and that's fine. But sometimes if you need big change, if you don't think if you fail, it's going to sink the ship, be bold and take a bold act. Make a bold statement. I remember once I had an employee, and we had a hard time communicating, getting along with each other. And our most difficult time is our annual convention, because it's when we just go crazy and we work so hard. And I made a very bold statement before the next conference, because everyone else I worked fine with. It was just this one person that somehow we just didn't gel quite together. But everyone else, we were a team. And I have many reasons why I think that was, but doesn't matter. That was the situation. And so before our convention, before the next one, I actually said to this person, my goal is that in this process, this week that we're going to be working intensely together, that I won't do anything that will make you suffer. And if I do, please tell me so that I will stop. That was a bold statement, I felt, for a director to say to someone that they were responsible for at a time when I needed them to support me the most, is to say, this is my determination that no one around me is going to suffer in this process. I made that statement, to him and someone else, that no one, and I said it to him specifically, that you won't suffer, but this other person, I said, my goal is through this week, no one around me suffers. And if you feel like I'm making anyone suffer, let me know so that I can address it. And I think that changed the whole dynamic of our team at that point. And I wasn't afraid to make that statement because I was committed to it, that it wasn't just lip service. I was determined to do it because I realized even if it meant I had to take a hit for something that wasn't even my fault, but the good of the organization and the conference and the success of the conference and the happiness of our members, the people that pay us to serve them, the members of this association that count on us to do our job, that they got what they needed, then that's all that mattered to me. I was willing to take that risk. And I think bold is what you have to do. If you want real change, sometimes you got to make a decision and take a bold action and mean it, and then stick to it and adjust later if you have to. Because I don't think anything is carved in stone. Don't carve it in stone. Just state it as if it's carved in stone, but be willing to adjust if you have to.
Like the Grand Canyon.
Yes, like that's right.
There was a decision. This river will go here.
That's right. like
no matter what, it stayed. I love it. That's exactly right. Thank you for that. And I think my biggest takeaway from what you just shared is the fact that all it takes is somebody to speak up, to open the door, to receive somebody else's feelings, emotions, and thoughts that can smooth over, remove, and make bigger, not only positive change, leaps of change.
Yes, leaps. I like that. Yes. Not one step for workforce kind, but a giant leap.
Yes. Everybody listening, this is the Voice of Bold Business Radio, and you can have all the program notes and links and information. Ron's full bio is going to be at the website, voiceofboldbusiness.com/P179. That is voiceofboldbusiness.com/P for program 179. You can also search Instill Culture in new employees. Now it's your turn, audience. What do you think? What are your experiences? Ron and I are having a great time. We're laughing. We know you are too. We want you to share what comes up for you, even if you have to go back to when you were 6 for some of that sunshine crew, right? The sunshine crew that you have. So rate this program wherever you're listening, iTunes, iHeartRadio, YouTube. It's important. Tell us what you want to hear. Tell us what you think. Share your experiences, because it's through your experiences, Ron's experiences, that we don't have to experience it ourselves. We can actually learn, absorb, and then make the best choices possible by our constant learning. Put yourself in the center of this learner-centered learning here. That was a lot of words. Anyway, we're talking about practical application and having a good time while we're doing it. So reach out, tell us, #VBB Radio. How do you instill culture in new employees?
The Voice of Bold Business Radio gives you insights about how to achieve your company's growth strategy. When you aren't seeing the growth results you want, it's time to get an outside perspective. To discuss your specific situation around growth strategy, work with us. Visit voiceofboldbusiness.com and click Find Out More. Special thanks to the Scott Treatment for technical production. Thank you for joining us.